It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America. We are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley. He has the morning off. I'm Gary McNamara. I don't. I'm here with you. And, looking for some positive words here to start the show. Anything, positive instead of negative. So let's go right to, I burst out laughing when I saw this yesterday when I was doing show prep and just going through YouTube to see what was going on. Congress not in session, but still things are going on in D.C. So as I was scanning, and this was on Forbes Breaking News, which, by the way, on YouTube is a great site to go to. They cover most everything, especially things that are going on in Congress and press conferences and things like that. But this I happened to catch, and I burst out laughing. State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce, former radio talk show host, here's what she had to say in her morning press briefing.
I think it's beautiful outside. Who was outside recently? Yes. It was raining. The flowers think it's a beautiful day.
There you go. That reminds me. I had a guy who worked for me a long time ago when I was a radio station manager. It's when I first started doing talk radio, and I probably had done it for a year. And there was a caller to my radio show. His name was Duke. He just called himself, it wasn't his real name, but he called himself Duke. And he was hilarious. He was the one that when we got to, it was April 1st one time, and I got on my talk show and said that, in as serious voice as possible, that, looking at the recent election results, and I don't even know what they were. This has to go back to 89, 90, so I don't know what it was. I said, after the recent election results, it's just, stupid people are voting, and we need to stop it, so we need to have a test. We need basically just to have a test. And so a few people argued with me, and then Duke called and said, all right, Mac, cut the crap. We know it's April Fool's. And then I had to move on. Well, I hired him as a talk show host. And I can't remember. It might have been the next April 1st. And he was extremely passionate. He was a kind of guy. Yes, I hired a listener who had no radio experience, and he was really good. Probably one in a million. You really don't find that where people can just step into this role of doing it. And he did an hour show for a couple of years for me, and it was really, really good. But he got on and just said, I know that I've been passionate, angry, furious with the way things are going on, but there's another side to the world, the beautiful flowers, the wonderful, cool spring weather now coming in to a place that's normally cold, and we should all love each other, and we just went, and he did the entire hour like that. And he would get a caller, and the caller would say something like, we got to figure out what's going on at City Hall, because it's just, what a beautiful City Hall we have. It's a lovely City Hall. Don't you love driving by City Hall? It's just greatness. So that's what that reminded me of. All right, before we go any further, I just saw this before we went on the air. I haven't found the audio yet. Apparently she deleted it, but they claim it's out there somewhere. I'll have to find it. This is a My Congresswoman update. Yes. By 3 blocks. Representative Jasmine Crockett, this is from Fox News, appears to be leaning in on her rising political stardom this week, briefly sharing what appeared to be a fan-made song that referred to her as the leader of the future. Here are some of the lyrics for you, okay? Jasmine Crockett. She rises with the dawn, fighting for justice. Her light will never be gone. A voice for the people, standing strong and proud, infectious with passion, she'll never bow down. Leader of the future, she's breaking all the chains. Jasmine, you rock, girl. Keep leading the fight. The roughly 2-minute-long song was set against what appeared to be photos of Crockett that were lightly animated using AI. It ended with a minute of Crockett's own comments at a recent House hearing. Apparently, she dropped it then. After a little bit, why would she drop it? You know, if you believe you are, why not keep it? Apparently, she deleted it. Also, lyrics to the song. A beacon of hope. We know you won't deceive, the song continued at another point. Democrat champion. Her mission's loud and clear. For every single citizen, she'll always be near. Yikes. No MAGA could silence the truth she displays. Jasmine, you rock, girl. Keep leading the fight. So there you go. That's a way to start the day in a positive way. Yeah, for those people who don't know, Jasmine Crockett, the absolute insane nutcase Jasmine Crockett, is my congressperson by 3 blocks after redistricting. I think it was in 2021. So 2021, 2022, when it officially happened. I don't know the precise date. But I was in a Republican congressional district, and they added my precinct to her district, which is why she won. When I tell people this, I always get emails on this because they go, come on, you have to have it wrong. She won her race with, I think it was almost 85% of the vote. There was no Republican running in the district. Yeah. Yes, they they loaded that district with Democrats so they can win other districts. But yeah. And so by 3 blocks. 3 stinking blocks. Now, the best part is, though, since I'm her constituent, I can blast her every single day. No, nothing would have kept me from blasting her if she wasn't my congresswoman by 3 blocks. But it makes it as if it makes it more credible because I'm a constituent, right? You agree with that? All right, good. You agree with that. So there you go. What a day it was yesterday. We've got so much to talk about. I mean, there's so many things going on. I thought it was interesting yesterday. The Supreme Court refuses to hear a case on free speech in public schools, and the Supreme Court completely wrong on this. And whoever, and we don't know, whoever on the conservative side let this slide, I have to ask one question, with all due respect: what the hell is wrong with you? And this was about the First Amendment at public school. And this was a 7th grader in Millborough, Massachusetts. He was pulled from class for wearing a T-shirt that said, there are only two genders. The school also banned, there are censored genders. Yet it encouraged others to wear pride gear to celebrate Pride Month. The student, again, don't know his name, known as LM, needed the Supreme Court to vindicate his free speech, but on Tuesday it refused to hear his case. This on the Wall Street Journal editorial page. Over 2 conservative dissents, Justice Alito wrote, we should affirm the bedrock principle that a school may not engage in viewpoint discrimination when it regulates student speech. He was joined by Justice Clarence Thomas. He also says lower court judges watered down the test for when the schools might prohibit speech to avoid disruptions. The touchstone case is Tinker. Now, this This is really interesting because I think the precedent's completely wrong here. I think the free speech issue is very, very simple under the First Amendment. And I'll tell you why I believe a Supreme Court in 1969 got it completely wrong. And I was so happy because that was my thought when I first read this. And I saw at the end, Justice Clarence Thomas made the exact same point that I was thinking in my head. To me, it's very simple. In a high school, look, you're not an adult. If the high school says there are no written messages on any shirts, that's fine. If they allow some political speech and not other political speech, that's where you violate the First Amendment. End of story. Now, the case that's the precedent is Tinker from 1969, when the Supreme Court upheld the right of public school students to wear black armbands to protest the Vietnam War. Nevertheless, the First Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in this case against LM, saying schools may ban passive speech if the message is reasonably interpreted to demean anybody's characteristics of personal identity, and if it's reasonably forecasted to poison the educational atmosphere due to its serious negative psychological impact, leading to substantial disruption. There's a tension between a student's free speech and the duty to maintain an educational environment, and the First Court emphasized that everyone seemed to agree that schools could ban T-shirts with slurs. LM, in this case, conceded that a school could bar a shirt displaying the message, quote, all trans kids are retarded, end of quote. Yet Justice Alito said the First Circuit courts cannot be squared with Tinker, in part because the First Circuit simply ratified the views of school officials. The judges first deferred to the administrators that the boy's shirt could be reasonably read as demeaning. Then Justice Alito said the judges deferred to the school's speculation about the likely effects of the T-shirts on students, even though LM in this particular case and what he did by wearing the shirt resulted in no disruptions in the school at all. Justice Thomas, in his own dissent, wrote that the lower court distorted the First Amendment case law, while noting that he also thinks Tinker is without basis in the Constitution and should be overturned. That's probably a long shot, but it shouldn't stop the court from giving lower court judges better guidance on applying Tinker, and perhaps another case like this one will arise soon. Until then, a suggestion for LM's next apparel order, quote, free speech lost at the Supreme Court, and all I got was this lousy T-shirt, end of quote. But Justice Thomas is where I was, I believe. That's what I got from what he wrote, which was, look, if you allow some free speech, all free speech can offend somebody. Free speech is about offending. Now, when you're in high school, you're not an adult. And if schools want to ban free speech, if they want to say nobody can wear a T-shirt, they can do that. They can't ban free speech. For example, if you're outside of school and you say something based on, political free speech, the school can't suspend you for it. We're talking political free speech, not threats. And all of that is in the news. All of that is about political free speech. You talk about the radical transgender movement. You're talking a political issue, which without question is political free speech in the United States. So if the school wants to ban everybody, that's fine. If the school says, well, no, we like this, this is good, we agree with this, well, somebody else could say, well, we're offended by it. People are offended by everything these days, as we know. So if that's the case, you're saying, well, people are offended by this, they won't be offended by that, and this could cause disruption. But it didn't cause any disruption. And the statement is actually a statement in fact. And they agreed that if it was a slur, yeah, that wouldn't be appropriate. So I found that interesting yesterday, but the Supreme Court completely wrong for not for not hearing that one. To me, it is absolutely a clear case, but I agree with Thomas. This is where you can look at a case, and you can look at precedent and say the precedent was wrong. The Supreme Court was wrong. They were wrong on that one. Nowhere in the First Amendment. Nowhere does it say that a institution should allow some political free speech and reject other political free speech based on their opinion of what is right and what is wrong. And especially when the free speech is absolute truth. All right, we got a great show ahead. We got so much to talk about. Elon Musk, not happy. It's interesting because have you noticed more conservative outlets? I don't, probably there were, but I know we were one of the few conservative outlets, radio talk shows that really pounded on the House Big Beautiful Bill and said, what's this miracle you created? You're spending money and you're not paying for it. You're creating more debt. You've done nothing for DOGE. Nothing. You've rejected, as we said last week, DOGE is dead. And you notice the White House, except when they talk about improving efficiencies when it comes to cutting, they've completely, and the Republicans completely dropped it. Elon Musk not happy. Said the exact same thing that we said. We'll get to that and more coming up. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Hey there, this is Hope Zavara with Mother Trucker Yoga, and here's your health tip of the day. Healthy driver, healthy diesel, powered by Howes. Lower back pain is one of the most common complaints amongst truck drivers, with over 50% experiencing it regularly. Let's fix that. Sit up tall in your seat, inhale and arc your lower back away from the seat, like there's a pin behind you you're trying to avoid. Now exhale, round your back, and tuck your tailbone under, just like the shape of the letter C. Repeat that movement 5, 10, even 15 times until your lower back and hips start to loosen up and feel ready for the road. There you go. Small, simple changes can lead to big results so that you, my friend, can feel good again. Visit mothertruckeryoga.com and houseproducts.com for more tips and support.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. I am here with you. You know, speaking of the First Amendment, you saw that NPR is suing the Trump administration. Actually, I guess making the point that defunding them undermines the First Amendment. Here's the NPR CEO talking about it.
The number one challenge here that we see and is, of course, the First Amendment in the United States is a fairly robust protection of rights. And that is a protection of rights both for platforms, which I actually think is very important, that platforms have those rights to be able to regulate what kind of content they want on their sites. But it also means that it is a little bit tricky to really address some of the real challenges of where does bad information come from and sort of the influence peddlers who have made a real market economy around it.
I have no idea what the hell she's talking about at the end there, but it's sort of like, okay, let me just say a bunch of words and We'll finish the interview, but I have no idea what she's talking about. First Amendment got nothing to do with taxpayer money, funding anything, any media whatsoever. And taxpayer money should not fund any media at all. It's even happening in some states and local communities where they're saying, okay, we need local news, so taxpayer dollars will go to that. Well, then the perception of every newscast, if the local government is paying you, is you're not getting the truth.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the next couple of mornings off, so it's you and me talking about free speech. And I'll start out with the NPR and PBS and the lawsuit against the Trump administration, saying their free speech is somehow being violated because funding is being taken away. I will say one thing. It does show their incredible bias because of their complete lack of understanding of the First Amendment and the Constitution of the United States, and that they somehow believe that their First Amendment rights are being violated in part because, well, I guess it would be fully, because that's what the Trump administration is hitting, is their funding. And, of course, we know it's got nothing to do with it. A couple of weeks ago, the Republicans had a hearing with the witnesses about it, and this is Representative Eric Burleson talking about. We had played the audio cut back then, but here it is as they talk about it.
It was said that we're attacking free speech. This is paid. This is state-sponsored speech, and the very reason why we have these witnesses before us today isn't because they're totally being funded or completely being funded. We're not bringing in Disney Channel in here, right? We're not bringing in the National Geographic, right, for their content. The reason why we're having this conversation is because we are funding you, and because we're funding you, the taxpayers get to have an opportunity to ask, why are we funding some of this content that they might disagree with? Right?
Yeah, no, that's completely right. In fact, I think that PBS and NPR, but especially PBS, will thrive on the membership model. They keep saying it's such a small percentage. Well, if it's the public funding, if it's such a small percentage, then no problem.
It was,
and that was the hearing a couple of weeks ago with Representative Eric Burleson making that particular comment. But that's the one thing that I picked up immediately. I'm like, really? They're trying to make that case? Well, it shows their incredible bias based on something that isn't true. They believe their First Amendment rights are being violated because they can't get taxpayer money. You know, if it was a lawsuit that said, well, specifically the way that this happened, it has to be Congress that takes this money away and not the president, well, then you could go through that technical point about when Congress funds something, what is the executive branch's authority, and, whatever that debate would be, that debate would be. But to make the case that taking away the funding, and by the way, that wouldn't be a First Amendment right. But they're making the case that their First Amendment rights have been taken away, and that's just... You wonder that if they're arguing this, which is so bogus and everybody knows it, trying to make that case that their First Amendment guarantees them a right to funding by the taxpayer, then I look at it and say, if you don't have a clue about the First Amendment, you shouldn't be in the news business. If you don't know what the First Amendment is about, and you're screaming that your First Amendment rights are being violated, and you're running a news division, and you're stating, we don't have any bias, we just tell you the truth, you've just cut your own legal argument and shown the bias that you have and shown America, well, this is sort of like the Jake Tapper thing. Well, Jake, get out of journalism. Well, we just missed it. Right. And if you can't observe, if you as a news person cannot observe what everybody else in the country knew, everybody knew, and now we know they knew. We knew, they knew, everybody knew. And you denied it happening, then you don't have the observational skills to be in the media. So get out. And same here. If you don't even understand what the First Amendment is about and you're suing and you're in the news business, get out of the news business. Because your critics then are right. Now, the last one to go to, we've got to go to part of Scott Pelley's speech to Wake Forest, the commencement address. Man, he's angry. Oh, man, he's angry. Here we go.
But in this moment, this morning, our sacred rule of law is under attack. Journalism is under attack. Universities are under attack.
Okay, I can stop it there. Bad journalism is under attack. The mainstream media, including CBS, ignoring the truth, that's under attack. The government wanting to censor media like the New York Post and other media outlet and social media for telling the truth. That's the media under attack. Where was 60 Minutes then? 60 Minutes buying into the delusion and the lies without any evidence of Russia collusion over a period of years. That's the problem. And does he give the impression that he has an extremely high opinion of himself? That his ego is like, whoa, way out there, like, I know. When I heard, and I watched the entire speech, it's the same blah, 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 blah. It really reminds me, I go back to Bernard Goldberg's book, Bias. And when he first wrote that book, that was the first book he wrote. And if you don't know the story, it's very quick. But Bernard Goldberg worked for Dan Rather. And he had a contractor, Bernard Goldberg, that was doing some work on his house. And when he found out who he was, he just said, man, the bias you people have. And Bernard Goldberg, denied it. He goes, no, we really don't have one. And he said, well, if you see any bias, well, then you send it, you let me know what it is. And we'll have the discussion at that particular point. So the contractor gets back to him. And this has to be somewhere in the late 90s. And the contractor comes back to him. He says, the report that you did here on the flat tax, that shows your bias right there. And Bernard Goldberg went back and saw it and listened to what the contractor pointed out who worked on his house, said, you're right. And the report started out, we're going to take a look at Steve Forbes' flat tax scheme. Use that word. Not a flat tax plan, scheme at that point. And Bernard Goldberg, knowing about the flat tax, said, no, it's an option that people have talked about. And I know people that disagree with it, and I know economists that disagree with it. I know economists that agree with it. And when they looked at the report, they only had experts on the side that the flat tax was bad. And Bernard Goldberg said the light went off in his head and said, that's bias. That's absolute bias at that point, where you've taken a side. And I'll never forget when he brought it up to Dan Rather, said this is biased stuff, and Dan Rather basically started talking about his military service, and he goes, I had no idea what he was talking about, but I realized at that point he was insulted that I told him he had bias, and basically I was calling him, not a patriot. He said, when I was simply saying, this is how journalism should work this way. You tell the story. And I'm paraphrasing here, but I believe I'm completely accurate on it, because it had a big impact on me way back when, because it was so simple. It was like, if you're a journalist, you should have said, for example, here's Steve Forbes' plan for the flat tax. There are people that agree with the flat tax or experts that disagree with it. Here's an expert that agrees with it. Well, first, here's what Steve Forbes had to say. Here's how the plan he said would work, and now we find somebody who disagrees with him, and then we find an expert that agrees with him, and at that point, you've been fair. And then you move on. And, you know, that was slowly his end at CBS. And then I remember, this has to go back, I don't know, it was 2002, 2003. I remember it was USA Today. And Bernard Goldberg, I think, mostly had voted for Democrats or whatever. I think he was called himself a social liberal and more of a fiscal conservative. And when USA Today came out with right-wing books are selling, and it was like Ann Coulter, Sean Hannity, and Bernard Goldberg. And I'll never forget it, getting on the air and saying, Bernard Goldberg's not a right-winger. He's not viewed as being on the right. But he said journalism is important. Actual journalism, fair journalism is important. And that made him right-wing in the eyes of many on the left, when he was simply promoting the fact that I want to be a journalist. We should be doing journalism here. And we're not. And the same thing with Scott Pelley. You can just hear. Oh, and the one thing he said, what you got to understand about the people in the media, they don't think they're left and right. I wonder if he'd say the same about Scott Pelley. They don't believe they're left. They believe there are the Democrats, there's Republicans, there's a left, there's a right, and then there's then there's them, the journalists. And they are above the fray. They are the ones that really know what is right, and their job is to lecture you as to what is right and how things should be run. But yeah, pretty funny yesterday. So you got it, covering all the different issues of the First Amendment that came out yesterday and over the weekend. And it's just amazing the number of people that have no clue what the First Amendment is about. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. He's off for the rest of the week. I'm here with you. I'm just reading National Review here. Is Scott Pelley an objective journalist? Whatever else you think of him, Scott Pelley has the perfect effect and voice for TV. I always view him as I can't think of his name. I know I actually met his father once. Clooney. George Clooney, yes. His father was Nick. He was a TV anchor in Buffalo, by the way, for a while. I always think of Nick instead of George. His address at Wake Forest, though, was painfully overwrought and self-involved. I don't begrudge him his views on Trump. Everyone has opinions, but he's a mainstay of our most prestige legacy news show that has always maintained a pretense of objectivity. What Pelley revealed at Wake Forest, which, of course, anyone with any discernment already knew, is that he has passionate, conventionally liberal opinions on the Trump administration. Again, that's fine, but will he and his colleagues now openly admit that 60 Minutes is an opinion show in the format of a news show? Pelley's deep commitment to telling the truth would seem to admit of no other option. That's Rich Lowry. I mean, that's the point there, too. If you heard his speech, you say, well, he's not critically analyzing all this stuff. He hates Trump. He's throwing out the same rhetoric that you hear from the Democrats. It's like, you're making the point against you. You're being attacked. You're being criticized for exactly what you did on stage. And that's the thing we've always said about the media. We've said it. We've been blunt. We're opinion givers. Now, we will not give an opinion on something we know is false. That's stupid. That would waste everybody's time. They will. So there you go. 866-90-RED-EYE if you'd like to get in. Coming up following the top of the hour, Elon Musk criticizes the big, beautiful bill. Very upset. He's asking the same question, where are the DOGE cuts? That and more on the way.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. It's you and me. Wow. Saw yesterday Rick Derringer died. The guitarist, rock and roll hoochie coo. Did you know that he also was part of the McCoys? Hang on, Sloopy. Yeah, there was. They were singing in that. I think another band actually did the music behind it, but Rick Derringer was a part of that. I just went through his biography yesterday when I saw that he had died. I know some people in the music business that knew him and said he was a really great guy. By the way, he was a Trump supporter. He played with everybody. I mean, it just... Did you know that he helped... it's Walter Fagan. Is it? Well, help Steely Dan. Well, yeah. What's the other one? Donald Fagen. He helped Donald Fagen get a record contract. Yes, Walter Becker, Donald Fagen. Thank you very much, Alan. Helped him get his first record contract in '72. Played on a ton of Steely Dan albums. You know, he said his favorite guitar work, I'm not making this up, was on an Air Supply song. Was it Making Love Out of Nothing at All, something like that? That guitar is Rick Derringer from rock and roll hoochie coo fame. Yes. He played with everybody. He played with Ringo Starr's all-star band. I think he did 3 tours with him. He went on a tour with a bunch of different guitarists, including B.B. King one time. So, and just, you know, the records that he produced. He produced a ton of records out there, too. But, 77 years old. Let me just look here as I was going through, because some of it was really interesting that I was reading on him. The McCoys I'd forgotten about. Oh, okay. He collaborated with Steely Dan, Cyndi Lauper, Weird Al, Rick Derringer, yes, from rock and roll hoochie coo fame. And this is something I didn't know until yesterday. He produced Eat It and Fat by Weird Al. I did not know that. He was always part of the Edgar Winter Group. Where is it here? Just trying to find out where Yeah, there it is. Derringer is credited having helped Donald Fagen secure a record deal in 1972. Was the next-door neighbor of Todd Rundgren. But, yeah, he did, wow. When you read it, you realize not only was he, in front on stage, but he was behind the scenes. I was looking here to see when they looked at, what he did with I lost it here now, but he did a bunch of stuff with the Winter Brothers. I think he produced Frankenstein. So, yeah, wow. How incredible, huh? All right, you ready to go? We're here. This came out yesterday. There was a story that Trump wanted to do something about it. The lawsuits about the states that are just, wanting to keep following the radical transgender movement. Nobody really had this. This came out at 5:18 from National Review. It seemed like everybody had the story that Trump said he was going to do something if the male was allowed in the girls track championship in California. California's organization that governs high school sports has at least temporarily revised state policies to ensure that girls are not booted off podiums by transgender-identifying men. The California Interscholastic Federation will now allow girls who would have been able to participate in this weekend's track and field state championship if a trans male had not stolen their spots to compete. The organization will also score transgender-identifying students in a separate category from boys and girls. By the way, they're going to get eviscerated for that. The last thing the radical transgender movement wants is to have a category of their own. Under this pilot entry process, any biological female student athlete who would have earned the next qualifying mark for one of their section's automatic qualifying entries in the state meet and did not achieve the state-at-large mark in the finals at their section meet was extended an opportunity to participate in the 2025 state track and field championships, they said in a statement. They believe this pilot entry process achieves the participation opportunities we seek to afford our student athletes. The rule change comes after a trans-identifying male, by the way, I'm reading this from National Review, Junior A.B. Hernandez qualified for the state championships triple jump and long jump events, displacing girls who would have qualified for the championship. Southern California parents have petitioned President Donald Trump to intervene in the matter, with many admonishing California's blatant disregard for an executive order the president signed in February, which prohibits men from participating in women's sports. By the way, I just want to hit this on National Review. Disregard the executive order. That's actually not true. It was Obama's executive order that changed the meaning of Title IX, which was clearly about biological men. Title IX, which was about opportunities for biological women. It was Obama and his executive order. Trump simply said with his executive order, we follow the law that Congress instituted in Title IX. It wasn't as if Trump just came up with an executive order. Everybody gets that wrong. They give the impression that Trump just came up with an executive order that isn't based on current law from Congress. That might not have been their attempt at National Review, but we've read this over and over again. Eric and I have caught on to this and went, wait a minute. This isn't because of the executive order. It's because of what Congress passed in Title IX. Trump brought attention to the girls eliminated from the state championship after Hernandez swept his female competition at the Southern Section Masters meet last weekend. Trump threatened to withhold federal funding from California if the state did not comply with his executive order. Trump said on Truth Social this week, a transition male athlete at a major event won everything and is now qualified to compete in the state finals next weekend. As a male, he was less than an average competitor. As a female, this transition person is practically unbeatable. This is not fair and totally demeaning to women and girls. Yep. Governor Gavin Newsom, who admitted on a podcast earlier this year, yes, we played it, that allowing men to play women's sports was unfair, has supported the updated procedures. The proposed pilot is a reasonable, respectful way to navigate a complex issue without compromising competitive fairness. A spokesperson for Newsom said the governor is encouraged by this thoughtful approach. The policy change appears only to affect the state track and field championship meet on May 30th and 31st. They should withhold the money then. Said Riley Gaines, although the modified rules are a welcome change, the revision doesn't go far enough. This is not an adequate response from the CIF following Trump's threat to pull funds from California. Boys would still be competing against girls, said political activist Riley Gaines. CIF is fully admitting girls are being pushed out of their sport by boys. They just think the boys' feelings matter more. And that's true. They will still compete against the women, but they will be in their own category. And by the way, the radical transgender movement doesn't want that. The whole point is if you say you're a man, you're a biological man, if you say you're a woman, you're a woman. I'm waiting now for the left to come out. Remember the professor from Berkeley who was going back and forth with Josh Hawley. And I wonder whether they'll come out and saying, by the way, segregating transgenders in sports is wrong, and the transgender community has the highest rate of attempted suicide, and that's on you. Because that's what their argument actually is, which is nuts. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Just because idling is common doesn't make it smart. Idling a diesel uses about a gallon of fuel per hour, which can cost you about $180 per week at $4.50 per gallon if your truck idles 8 hours a day. Idling easily can cost you a few thousand more in fuel alone per year, not including the added engine maintenance expense that results from excessive idling. Harder on your truck's engine than highway driving. In addition to operating costs, many governments impose no idling laws and regulations with fines as high as $25,000. Instead, there are many alternatives. An extra blanket for cold temperatures, window screens for when the weather is warm, bunk heaters, and various auxiliary power unit options abound in this day and age too, many powered just by batteries. Otherwise, diesel and gas gensets burn far less fuel than your truck's engine. Research options to find your fit. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics.
Brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. All right, I want to play that audio cut from about 3 years ago that I just referenced on the radical transgender movement. a Berkeley professor going back and forth with Josh Hawley. Here we go.
Before I want to visit with you, Ms. Maskey, but before I do, I just want to clear one thing up. Professor Bridges, you said several times, you've used a phrase, I want to make sure I understand what you mean by it. You've referred to people with a capacity for pregnancy. Would that be women?
Many women, cis women, have the capacity for pregnancy. Many cis women do not have the capacity for pregnancy. There are also trans men who are capable of pregnancy, as well as non-binary people who are capable of pregnancy.
So this isn't really a women's rights issue.
We can recognize that this impacts women while also recognizing that it impacts other groups. Those things are not mutually exclusive, Senator Hawley.
Oh, so your view is that the core of this right then is about what?
So I want to recognize that your line of questioning is transphobic, and it opens up trans people to violence by not recognizing that.
Wow, you're saying that I'm opening up people to violence by asking whether or not women are the folks who can have pregnancies?
So I want to note that 1 out of 5 transgender persons have attempted suicide. So I think it's important
because of my line of questioning? So we can't talk about it?
Because denying that trans people exist and pretending not to know that they exist.
I'm denying that trans people exist by asking you if you're talking about women having pregnancies?
Do you believe that men can get pregnant?
No, I don't think women can get
So you are
pregnant.
denying that trans people exist?
And that leads to violence? Is this how you run your classroom? Are students allowed to question you?
Absolutely.
Or are they also treated like this, where
No,
they're told that they're opening up people to violence?
We have a good
by
time in my
questioning?
class. You should join.
Oh, I bet.
You might learn a lot.
Wow, I would learn a lot. I've learned a lot just in this exchange.
Absolutely.
Extraordinary.
Yep.
Ms. Math.
There you go. And I mean, it's clear, and this was the beginning where we realized one of the things, not the beginning, but one of the things among us where we realized the left really doesn't give a damn about transgenders. They don't care. She doesn't care. They just want to push an insane narrative because she's admitting what she's saying is, and this is a common narrative that comes from the radical transgender movement, that you cannot talk about it because if you talk about it, that, you know, when they say opening up to violence and you're saying, oh, okay, then you're asking it so somebody else is going to commit violence against them. No, they'll commit violence against themselves. So the left that is proposing the radical transgender movement is making the case that transgenders, this is a case they're making, that transgenders are so mentally ill that if you talk and ask questions about the topic, you'll drive them to suicide. And so the only solution is to allow anybody who says they're transgender the ability, whether they're a minor or not, to cut off their private parts and get hormone therapy. This is how insane the left is on all of this, but they're not going to give it up. You see in California, okay, how can we do this? What can we do here? Okay, all right, the biological man still would be racing against the woman, so we have that. They're trying to ride this tightrope now that the radical transgender movement isn't going to accept. And so, okay, you can race against women, but you can't win against women. You will be in a classification of your own. So in a women's meet, there will be, because as far as I know, he is the only one in this meet. So he will win a trophy because he won against himself. What is the trophy for? How do you do this? This is how crazy it gets. But they just can't. They know it's wrong. Newsom knows it's wrong. All Democrats know it's wrong. They don't believe that they can defeat the insanity of the minority of liberals that believe in this. And that's why you have 99.9% of Democrats in Congress that vote for it. They know it's insane. They don't care. They don't believe that they can get elected as Democrats unless they promote this absolute insanity. And they're not going to give it up. The Democrats aren't going to change. They are desperately searching for someone who can speak in the syntax that will get them men back. I just love the syntax. We'll get to that and more on the way. But I wanted to play that audio because we refer to it a lot, and I realize there are a lot of people that have never heard the video. And when we explain it, much easier to explain it when you can hear it.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Eric has a morning off. I'm here. Download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen when and where you choose. And it's free. It's always free. That's right. And as we always say, we record our show, and it becomes our podcast. And it runs during the day. So you can listen, and we thank you if you're listening in the future. We thank you for listening in the future. All right, here's Elon Musk. Was interviewed by CBS on the big, it has a nice personality bill. Here we go.
So, I was disappointed to see the massive spending bill, frankly, which increases the budget deficit, not just decrease it, and undermines the work that the DOGE team is doing.
I actually thought that when this big, beautiful bill came along. I mean, everything he's done on DOGE gets wiped out in the first year.
I think a bill can be big or it can be beautiful, but I don't know if it can be both.
It's something that we've talked about, and I could see. We had said that there weren't a lot of Republicans talking about it at all. It was wonderful. It was great because of all the things that you would get out of it. You would continue the tax cuts. There would be no tax on tips. There would be no tax on overtime to a particular point. They couldn't do the and by the way, they couldn't do the Social Security part of it. I had explained it over the weekend to a few people when I was in Florida. They gave the deduction, a $4,000 deduction. Now we don't know if that's going to last in the Senate or what. They gave a $4,000 deduction extra for anybody over the age of 65, but it's not related to whether you're actually collecting Social Security or not. And the reason for that is, I guess, would be the Byrd rule. What can you get through reconciliation? And you can't get through that through reconciliation because it is about Social Security. It's not just about budgeting. It's about the funding actually of Social Security. So that's why that could never be passed in reconciliation, which is why you got that. We talked about the bill and how it's wonderful how when you look at the insane cultural things that we've been funding as a nation, those have been cut out, and many of them have been cut out, and it's really good that they did that. But overall in the bill, I saw Mike Johnson out there yesterday saying, well, the reason that they say it's going to increase the deficit is because we're going to have 3% growth. Well, we haven't had 3% growth on average at all since, if you look at, the last 25 years. It's not the case. We haven't had 3% growth. They looked at, it was 2.8% first. I believe they settled on 2.6%, percent growth. For this year, for example, the expected growth is 1.94%. Who knows what that will be, actually? Are they off? Yeah. But nobody's up there stating that 3% GDP is going to be what we see over the next 3 years on an average. And when we have seen Congress before promote what the growth is going to be to justify the numbers in the bill, I don't remember the last time it actually hit that number. But Ron DeSantis was talking about it yesterday. Here we go.
$1 trillion deficit is a tax on you. It works its way through the economy. There's no free lunch, and that's what ends up happening. And it's a little frustrating. You know, Elon Musk went into this DOGE effort. He was getting lampooned. I mean, like, they're firebombing his Tesla dealerships. Media is smearing him relentlessly. His businesses suffered, all this stuff, because he basically said, look, we can't keep doing this, and we need to moderate and reduce the amount of money that the federal government is spending. And yet, we have a Republican Congress, and to this day, we're in the end of May, past Memorial Day, and not 1 cent in DOGE cuts have been implemented by the Congress. That's one of the reasons why we need a balanced budget amendment to the U.S. Constitution. It's another reason why we need term limits for members of Congress.
Okay, and he moved on to other things there, but the one thing you can't forget, if you're going to blame Republicans, you also have to blame the administration. The administration, Trump has not been out there saying the DOGE cuts must be in all these bills. He's not saying that. We all know it. We all know that when it comes to being on the podium, the Trump administration is not promoting the DOGE cuts anymore. They're not promoting the $5,000 check that you're going to get. If you're going to blame Republicans, Trump does not skate out of this without some of the blame. It's his big, beautiful bill. It's named after what he called it. The major tenets of the bill when it comes to tax cuts are from Trump. Trump is the one that created DOGE. And as we said, the creation of DOGE, in my opinion, was absolutely one of the greatest things a president has done because I didn't see any upside. Because I know the American people don't really want to cut. It was good to see some people in Florida clapping, saying we need a balanced budget amendment. That's not going to happen. And, you know, we had said it last week, the week before, and you really heard, except for people like Rand Paul and Chip Roy and maybe Rick Scott and a few others, no one in the administration was saying, we got to cut more. No one. Not President Trump, no one. And so if you want to look at Congress, you can look at Congress, but as we all know, Trump was all over. And Chip Roy, he called a grandstander. The people that were against it, that were saying we need to cut more, were grandstanding. So if you're going to criticize what the Republicans are doing, Trump deserves his portion of blame for creating DOGE, and just a few months later, we hear nothing on it except when it comes to the efficiencies in the departments, the modernization and things like that. But when it comes to cuts, DOGE is dead. The administration's not talking about it. It was all this hype and hoopla, and every day we heard the waste and inefficiency, and it was going to be $2 trillion, then $1 trillion. And Elon Musk also deserves some blame for that, for setting the hopes way too high that you could cut $2 trillion or $1 trillion. And when we said that's not possible to cut $2 trillion, we were criticized. But it wasn't hard to figure out if you know what the budget is, if you know the particulars of the budget and the minutia of the budget. That was pretty easy to figure out. You're not going to get there. So Republicans across the board, including Trump and the administration, they all have to take their blame for hyping DOGE, and then when it gets to this point, completely forgetting like it never existed before. That's on them. And the Republicans did not create DOGE. Trump did. And when you're the president, you're the leader. which makes me wonder, what was the whole point of DOGE? If they knew they didn't have the votes to ever do this, why did they market the daylights out of it and hype the daylights out of it when they knew? Because let's be frank, they were never going to cut $1 trillion. They were never going to cut $150 billion. They were never going to cut $100 billion. That wasn't going to happen. We said if they cut $1, we got to the point saying if they just spend at the rate of inflation for this year, can they even accomplish that? Nope. So all these grandiose figures that they were throwing out, and it was the administration, it was the Trump administration throwing it out, now is completely forgotten as if it never existed. And our question here at Red Eye, then why the hell did you do it in the first place? But there you go with Elon Musk coming out against it. You heard Governor DeSantis. I saw Rick Scott was on it also saying he will not vote for this particular bill. But at least you have some, and it may whimper out in the next couple of days. The only thing that may give it, I guess, some wings is the fact that Elon Musk, who people view as DOGE, has come out and said, very disappointed with this bill, that there really are no DOGE cuts. And as he said, you can't be big and you can't be beautiful at the same time in this day and age in the United States. Now, I'm wondering how the administration will respond to him, because you can guarantee there will be some questions. But we asked this from the very beginning. If you've been a long-time listener to the show, which is, I'm talking a long time here, going back to last year when they started talking about DOGE, and we said, whoa, this is gutsy, because the American public, Republicans aren't really asking for this. The American public isn't, and they brought it up. We thought it was awful gutsy. We said, this is the best thing that they could ever do. If they don't fulfill some of the promises, it'll be the worst thing, because there is no chance after this. If they can't cut after all the hype, after all the hoopla, after all the marketing on it, from $2 trillion to you're going to get a $5,000 check, and it was all a line of horse manure. Did they not know it? Did they get caught up in the celebration? Eric and I look at it and say, was this a beginning of the administration Epstein file thing, where they're waving it? We got the Epstein file. Everything here. Everything here. An hour later, oh, there's nothing there. It's got the same old stuff. Was it celebration just for the sake of celebration? Was it all based on imagery and emotion? Oh, my gosh. I sound like I'm talking about Democrats. But yeah, it is disappointing. It really is, because there was a moment where you hoped that they could do something. We did look at it though and say, if they pushed it through, if they push through $500 billion in cuts, or even $100 billion in cuts, they're really not cutting except able-bodied. You'd think able-bodied men, things like that, and they're still getting eviscerated. But if you look at it, look at the polls for Trump. Look at the consumer confidence right now. With all this negative stuff, it's still high. Should they have attempted to do it, I guess would be the question. Was the public at least ready for some cutting or some moderating or just growth of the budget at the rate of inflation? We'll probably never know the answers to those questions, because I don't believe the Senate is going to even get to that point. 866-90-RED-EYE.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. He is Eric Harley. He has the morning off. Coming up following the top of the hour, the FBI reopens a probe into the cocaine found in the Biden White House. That'd be interesting if they actually look at that investigation and say, because really, I mean, that the Secret Service did it, right? I don't think it was the FBI. So the Department of Justice going in to look at that would be interesting. I think it was the Secret Service. I'm not sure. I'll have to go back and look. I just can't remember. But be interesting if they start investigating the investigators on that one and say, well, they actually knew who did it. We'll get to that. Pete Buttigieg talks about the Democrats' cultural struggle and the things that they have done wrong. And with the Democrats looking to spend $20 million on syntax, trying to figure out how to communicate with men. Another story came up the other day about the words that Democrats use. That they've got to drop some of these words, and we'll get to those. I'm sorry, it's so dang funny to watch the Democrats right now. I mean, they have no idea where to go. Maybe it's the words. Okay, we need to stop using the big words. Okay, use the small. Okay, the people are stupid. They don't understand. If we explain these words, especially the words concerning the radical transgender movement, if we explain what the words mean, then we can convince them. But, they're just stupid people and they can't understand the big words. Man, we'll get to all of this coming up. Just ridiculous.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. Good morning. Thank you for being here. This started out as a local story, really on Monday, but it slowly became a national story. And then when the suspects were found to be illegal immigrants, the thing just blew up, and we're talking about, and it's right near us. It's not far at all from where we are. We're sort of on the east side, the northeast side of DFW Airport, and Grapevine Lake is on would be roughly the north west side of DFW. If you're ever coming into DFW from the north, if you look to your right just before you land, you'll see Grapevine Lake right there. And there was a fatal hit-and-run jet ski crash that killed a young woman, Ava Moore. And when I saw that it was a hit-and-run, I think everybody thought the same thing. Either alcohol's involved or it was an illegal immigrant. I know that's what I thought. And when I brought it up to people that I were with, it said, okay, that's either alcohol or you're an illegal immigrant. Well, the suspect that was arrested is an illegal immigrant in the United States. So it's so terrible. It really, really is. The Democrats will always argue and say, well, crime happens and things happen all the time. But if they weren't here, those things would not happen. It was always a poor argument Democrats were trying to use. Well, illegal immigrants and by the way, that was debated. That was there were critics of that said we don't believe that's true, and we went through all those statistics way back when. We always said, though, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Even if that is true, it wouldn't matter, because those particular crimes would not have happened at that point. But if you look at here, I haven't seen anywhere in the story with the arrest of the suspect that they were under the influence. And if you're here, illegal, and you do something like that, you are going to run if you wish to stay in the United States. So, yeah, that was it's so sad. I mean, she was going to the Air Force Academy, the victim in this case, and it's really, really, really sad. It really is. I mean, it just breaks your heart that happened. All right, 866-90 Red Eye. Where do we want to start here? Oh, I know what I wanted to start. Just going back a little bit here because I thought this was just fascinating. We had talked earlier about Trump wanting to defund NPR and PBS, whatever, and the lawsuit, and how much of the lawsuit is about First Amendment, because there is no First Amendment issue here. I found this interesting because David French, who I believe used to write for National Review, used to be a conservative. Trump destroyed him. He became a pile of mush. But I want to hear what he has to say on the whole lawsuit from NPR and PBS. This is on MSNBC. All right, here we go.
That as well. So, David, can you put into perspective how much the NPR case is escalating a nationwide culture attack on free speech?
Yeah, I've not seen anything like this in my adult lifetime. I think we're looking at a comprehensive attack on free speech that is maybe most reminiscent of the Red Scare. And, the one thing that is so particularly pernicious about it is that Donald Trump is very shrewd, politically shrewd in his attack. He's taking on a lot of institutions that a lot of Americans don't like. So, for example, elite universities. You're not exactly going to get millions of Americans in the streets for elite universities. Or white shoe law firms. People aren't going to be in the streets for white shoe law.
Now, as we know, because we can stop it there, we all saw the hearings after October 7th at all the elite prestigious universities. Absolutely. They are not following civil rights law in this country. The anti-Semitism that's going on, the racism of anti-Semitism, if it was racism of another kind, the Democrats would want it shut down immediately. And it's blunt. No taxpayer dollars should go to any media. None. Number one, we can't afford that luxury, even if it was a good thing. Number two, it's not a good thing. Government should not be supporting media. You've seen it in different states, different localities, different regions that have taken government money in order to promote local news. We don't have a lot of local news, so taxpayer dollars should go into it. No, because the perception at that point, the perception is, and this is for half the country with PBS, the perception is you're a leftist organization. And as we know, they're a leftist organization. We know the media in general is a leftist organization. If you look at legacy media out there, mainstream media, legacy media, whatever you want to call it. We all know where they say, and their biases are fine. Have your bias. Don't defame. You don't have lawyers. Don't believe that you need to have lawyers not on retainer, actually monitoring your show live because you're so irresponsible with your speech that your own company is afraid The View we're referring to. Your own company is afraid of massive lawsuits. And this started, by the way, during the Biden administration, not Trump, where you're constantly being monitored by lawyers real time because they can't trust a damn thing you're going to say because you're that irresponsible. Reminiscent of the Red Scare. No, it's... And that's why all this screaming and yelling isn't going anywhere. That's why, Trump polls haven't crashed. They've done very, very well. Better than he's ever had before. In the Rasmussen poll, the direction of the country, I think, is at 50%, which is the best it's ever been in that particular poll. That's because it's a simple thing. There is no elite media or special media that or a special narrative or a special news product that comes out of PBS that needs taxpayer dollars. Well, it makes it better because PBS money. No, sorry. Sorry. Taxpayer money should not go to any media. I don't want taxpayer money going to media that leans right. Why? The perception itself is bad. And by the way, I've always held that position since I've been in talk radio. Doesn't matter. I don't care what it is. When it comes to media, government funds should not be in there. End of story. But yeah, it's just amazing. We've never seen anything like this. We've never seen anything like this. No. We know exactly what's going on. The public, Democrats may be screaming, but everybody knows. You pull most people aside and you say, should government be funding any media? Most of them would say no. It's a waste of money. You don't need to do it. Can they produce some good programming? And does it help that they have taxpayer dollars? And can they produce some good programming? Yeah, well, if they can, you should be able to sell it in the arena of the arena of the marketplace, not of ideas. And if you wish to be left, go ahead. We could care less. You just don't get taxpayer dollars. You shouldn't get taxpayer dollars at all. The premise should not be you don't get taxpayer dollars if you're on the left. It's you don't get taxpayer dollars if you're the media. Doesn't matter whether you're left or right. You don't get it. End of story. So I found that interesting yesterday how they're going to go crazy on it, but you're not going to win that one. Because most Americans are going to look at it and go, nah, not really. And if you have a donor thing where you wish to have a nonprofit that donations are taken, then, yeah, do that. Sell advertising, do that. But the government, especially the federal government, has no business supporting any media at all, ever. So there you go. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. I'm here with you. All right, so last couple of days we've been having fun with the Democrats and the fact that they want to spend $20 million to figure out how to talk to men. And we've talked about the analysis of Democrats on their own party and said, they just don't get it. They just don't get it. They just don't get it. They keep saying, well, we have to message differently. David Hogg, well, everything we believe is the right thing. We just need new people to sell it. Get the old people out, get new faces in to sell the things that Americans don't like. And you ask yourself, is there anybody out there in the Democratic Party that's at least willing to admit, we know they know what the real problem is. They know that they suck on the issues. They know it. They can't admit it. Well, somebody did. Well, they didn't use the same terminology that I did, but Pete Buttigieg interviewed. I want to play this here. The Daily Caller had this. He was on a podcast, and he was asked specifically, if you could go back and look a year ago or during the Biden administration, what would you have done differently? Now, remember, he went along with everything that went on in the Biden administration. Now, he worked for the Biden administration, and he's as far left as you can get, but he even recognizes what the problem is. Might not say it in the exact same way that we would, but he understands exactly what the problem is. Here it is.
I'm giving you a DeLorean. And we are going to go back to right after Biden gets the nomination in 2020. So, you just endorsed him. He hasn't picked Vice President Harris yet. The world is our oyster. We're in the middle of COVID. And you're Pete from today. And you get to talk to Pete from back then, or maybe Biden from back then. And you get to give them some advice. Give them some advice that would maybe prevent us from having this current president. What do you think y'all should have done differently?
One, for the love of God, figure out a way to get the schools open sooner. We got very knee-jerk about this, and the costs were not just politically, but in a profound way. I think for the generation, the costs were profound, and I think anybody who was involved, who was, by the way, obviously doing their best to deal with a crisis that killed a million Americans.
Sure.
But I think most people involved would like to be able to have found a way to safely get more schools open more quickly. Obviously,
that was a great first answer. I had no idea where you. I mean, there's so many ways you could have gone with that, but that's a good one. I didn't expect you to say.
From where I was sitting, obviously, pay more attention to the border. That's real, and that's going to be something that you can't just take your time to deal with. These are all things, by the way, that is super, policy-wise and politically. We have the benefit of hindsight to reflect a lot of this, right? 3, even though you spent your entire political lifetime believing that the economy and jobs are the same thing, and if you have lots of jobs, it's a good economy, and if you have a problem with jobs, it's a bad economy, remember that prices is just as big a part of the economy. It just hasn't come up much in the last 40 years.
So there you go. Inflation, the border, closing schools. Now, let's set him correct set him to the right place here, because when he started talking about the border, we needed to focus more on the border. You did focus on the border. You created what happened at the border. That's the thing that that Pete Buttigieg can't tell you. They created it. The border happened because they wanted open borders. And he's trying to make it sound like it was a problem that we didn't handle quick enough. It wasn't a problem to Democrats. Democrats wanted an open border. Biden or whoever was pulling the strings we can add that now, can't we? We can say that now without ever worrying about being called a conspiracy theorist. Because where did we get that idea from? Democrats. Thank you, Jake Tapper. I mean, could have got working on the border earlier. You did. You started working on the border from day one. Biden or whoever was controlling the strings of Biden, they created it. It's what they wanted. The reason they could never fix it is they created it. You didn't need comprehensive immigration reform. You didn't need Congress passing any bill. All you needed was a president who would enforce the law. End of story. Instead of a president who said to hell with the law, or whoever's pulling the strings, we're going to do exactly what we want. As for schools, we knew by the time we got to September and October of 2020, it was the wrong thing. The Great Barrington Declaration came out in October of 2020. Again, this wasn't something that, we should have acted on it quicker. No. The teachers union, Randy Weingarten, was promoting we can't open schools. You had the support of the teachers union, and so you didn't give a damn about the children. You cared about the teachers union. That's what you cared about. Because we knew. You know, it's like when I saw that the NIH and Kennedy yesterday said, okay, for young kids, you know, the COVID vaccine, again, is not on the recommended list. Well, we had said way back when. This is something we figured out way back when, and since we don't live in the bubble of today, Eric and I actually remember these things. You know, that's why the whole Cuomo thing, the whole Andrew Cuomo thing, is we knew that old people were a lot more susceptible. Old people and old people with underlying conditions. Me. They're the ones that COVID was a much bigger threat to. Even though, do you know, to this day, I'm the only one of everybody, right? I'm the only one that has not, here in the office, I'm the only one that was never tested positive for COVID. And during that time, because remember everything that was going on, remember Eric doing like 3 weeks from home when he tested positive. I never missed a day because of COVID. Never had to be out of the studio. We'll get to more of this coming up. We'll finish our analysis here.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen when and where you choose. So, talking about the Democrats and the Democrats trying to figure out where they went wrong. And finally, the Pete Buttigieg interview that was done on a podcast where he laid it out. He said, hey, schools closing because of COVID, way too long. The border and inflation. Now, he gives an excuse for each and every one of them and tries to make it sound like, well, with 2020 hindsight vision. No, we knew it at the time. We all knew it. And he did say even with inflation and prices, he said, yeah, and we kept saying there's no problem, with inflation, yet there was. And he said, but we had to get ourselves out of it. Yeah, but you didn't need to do the $1.9 trillion at that point. That wasn't needed. We were outside of COVID. Democrats wanted to spend a ton of money is what they wanted to do. And so, but at least he recognized what the problem was, what the issues are. He made the point, we stink on the issues, or we cause the issues. As we always say, they suck on the issues, and that's why. But it's very important to understand when it comes to inflation and when it comes to what was going on in the schools. That's what the Democrats wanted. They didn't view that as a mistake. They never did. They knew what their critics were saying. The Great Barrington Declaration had already come out in October of 2020 and said, open the damn schools. Children aren't affected by COVID. It's less harmful to them than the flu. What are you doing? Open the schools. Open the schools. Nope. And Randy Weingarten on the national level from the teachers union was the one that they were listening to. And they had to listen to her because that's where they get a lot of cash from. This isn't hard to figure out. On the border, we know they caused the problem. They created the problem. They couldn't solve the problem. This is where Buttigieg is not telling you the truth. where he said, oh, we should have got to work on that earlier. You did. You created it. And then on prices. Wow. I still find it amazing that political parties, we never thought about prices. What are you, idiots? We just said the economy's doing fine, and we never thought about the fact that is their economy doing fine? Because that's how people judge the economy. They judge the economy by, how am I doing? And we had given the warning way before inflation hit its peak. And we said it. Inflation is the worst. Prices, having high prices, there is nothing more politically damaging than high prices. As you can see right now with the president wheeling and dealing back and forth and threatening the tariffs and pulling back on these monstrous tariffs, why are they doing it? Well, because they're getting all the other countries to succumb to his will. That may be part of it. Is that all of it? No, he's afraid of high prices. He admitted it. Walmart better eat the tariffs. They know. I mean, it's not hard to figure out because inflation is even worse than if you have a small recession. If you have 10% unemployment, it means 90% of the people are still working. And most of the time when you have a recession or a downturn in the economy, prices go down. When you have inflation, it affects everybody. And you know what's worse than temporarily not having a job? Having a job, getting another part-time job, and still not making ends meet because prices are out of control. We warned the Democrats about it. They laughed. Who said, I can't remember who's the person who said on the Democrat side that inflation is a good thing because it shows people are spending money, because people will spend more money for the same product, which means they're willing to spend more money for that product, which is a good thing that will help drive the economy. Like, these people are insane. And I want to get to the other thing that Buttigieg had to say here on the cultural struggle with being condescending to Trump's supporters.
Look, I mean, there's, Democrats have created this impression, I think partly because of the way we feel and talk about Trump, have created this impression that translates into the way we feel and talk about people who supported him. And that's the thing that I think really is a cultural struggle in our party. There's this sense of condescension. I mean, if I hear one more time, like a well-off liberal doctor or lawyer saying, that quote unquote, these folks are voting against their economic interests, I just wonder whether they ever contemplated the fact that somebody could turn around and say, so are you. There's a condescension that is imputed to Democrats that I think we really need to deal with. So much of politics is not just how you make people feel, but how you make people feel about themselves. And so much of what they think of you comes down to what they think you think of them. And largely because of our very justified horror at the abuses of Donald Trump as a candidate and as a president, we've said and done things that make voters feel like we're talking about them.
So we're justified in everything we said about Trump. It just can't relate it to the people who vote for Trump. Well, the problem is, no, you weren't. The lawfare helped destroy the Democrats in 2024. People saw the lawfare. Think about it. When they sit there and say, they elected, well, that's the whole point. This is what Buttigieg doesn't see again. Because they're screaming. The Trump people are Nazis because they elected somebody. How could you elect somebody with 34 felonies? Right? They assumed that the lawfare was legit. Trump people and independents and a lot of Democrats didn't view it that way. They viewed it as a banana republic. They viewed that as worse than anything that you claim Trump has done. You used lawfare against him. And you supported the lawfare against him from rogue DAs and rogue judges. You were okay with that. So he doesn't see that. But at least he can recognize they're getting closer. At least he recognized some of the problems, which, again, are all issue related. And then what was the other one that I wanted to get to here, because it was the Washington Post story on the fact that Democrats aren't using the right language. And it gets into I don't know if the article is behind a paywall, but I saw a ton of comments on it. But it was about using words, that this wasn't the syntax thing. It was like we still use words that people don't understand, like intersectionality and equity and things like that. And people don't know, those we use those big words. And when you use the big words, that makes it so we can't communicate with the average guy. Now, I take that as the average guy's an idiot, and so therefore he can't understand big words. But they're wrong on that, too. It's not the use of the words. It's what the word means. It was Democrats' troubles revived debate over left-wing buzzwords, Washington Post. Democratic troubles revived the party's debate over left-wing buzzwords, from intersectionality to equity. Many say jargon is alienating key voters, but progressives say inclusive language is vital. Now, intersectionality, in case you don't know, describes the interconnected nature of social categories like race, gender, and class as they relate to individual and group experiences. If you want to know what that means, it means identity politics. It means we judge people by the group that they're in, not as individuals. And we know what equity is. Equity is the basic concept that there needs to be equality in the end game, which means discrimination is okay. Which, of course, neither the public buys. It's not the words, it's what the words represent. And they just don't get that. They just don't get it. And I don't know if they ever will. Buttigieg knows it. He's soft selling it for the audience that he's talking to there, but he hit all the right issues that the public looks at the Democrats and go, well, he didn't bring up the radical transgender movement. I don't know if was he given permission? Was Buttigieg given a permission structure? But yeah, he didn't talk about the radical transgender movement. But that's, when you think about it, when the polls were done after the election that said the women's rights issue was not abortion, that the women's rights issue, and we had said this going into the 24 election. We said, after DOGE, you figured that it would be accelerated. But when you see the fact of birth control, it's not the issue that it used to be because of birth control. It just isn't the issue. Democrats wanted to be the issue, and it wasn't. And it was overtaken by the radical transgender movement and the absolute misogyny, the boisterous misogyny that Democrats were so proud of against women. And they're still doing it today. You see people like Newsom slowly trying to back up, but you can't back off all the way. You back off to the point where the radical transgender movement's going to get angry at you because you're saying, okay, as California just did yesterday, okay, a biological man can race against a woman, but they're in their own category. That's what California's came up to for their state track championship. Women, you still have to run against men, but if you didn't get in to the state finals because a man beat you, let's say you were in second place, to a man, well, then you can be in the state championship, and the man, the biological man, will be in a category by themselves. It won't be a biological male. It won't be a biological female. They will have the transgender race. Let's see how that's taken by the radical transgender movement, who I believe will be furious at that. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. Coming up following the top of the hour, really interesting, some audio of what was on Fox News the other day about Jake Tapper's book, Original Sin. And it's like, you're like, wow, unbelievable, which means these hearings, when they take place, they've got to call everybody in. They've got to call anybody who was around around Biden at that time to come in, because what they're saying, what people that worked for Biden said, his aides, is that they were making huge economic decisions without ever even talking to the Treasury Department about it. What decisions, we don't know, but they were just like, and this was source said in the book, we don't care whether Biden is basically comatose. We just put him in there and the aides will take care of it, that the aides will run it. They expected to do that in the second administration. And I'm telling you, I can't wait for these hearings. And that's one of the things, too. Anything that Trump may do right now, I think that anything that Trump says, I think people already know what his personality is like. And he says things that later on he doesn't, doesn't put into policy, will back off on certain things. But I think when they look at what he does, they go, it's quite moderate. And I think all the yelling and screaming about Trump doesn't mean anything. But when they listen to what happened during the Biden administration, they're like, my God, this happened in the United States of America? More to come.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley. He has the morning off. I'm Gary McNamara. Thank you for being here. One thing Eric and I have talked about it in the past is, if you're a politician and you constantly lie, does your family or friends ever tell you? Because we find it really, really interesting knowing our own lives and knowing our family and our friends, that if I was getting on the air and lying every day, or even lying once, not that I have a wrong opinion, but if I was basing my opinion by saying my opinion on something which is a lie, is this. It's the topic you're talking about. It's about the actual lie. And I forgot what kicked it off a couple of years ago. But Eric and I looked at each other and I said, could you lie like that? It might have been Mayorkas talking about the border is secure. When I think about that, I think of what's the biggest whopper out there, over the last couple of years. The border was secure while, there were pictures of thousands of people crossing the border. And the video was out there, and we all knew it was a lie. Everybody knew it was a lie. So I'm going to guess it had. That's a pretty good guess. I don't remember exactly who it would be, but I know that he would fit that exactly. That there he is, and the border secure. Yes, the border is secure. Yes, the border is secure. Yes, the border is secure. It's like, and we asked the question: do their family and friends ever tell them, you look like an idiot? Stop doing that. Because I'd get that. Stop lying. What are you lying about? Cut it out. And the same thing with everything with Biden and the original sin book. A lot of us, Eric is and I am, family members that have dementia, major cognitive problems because they're older. And the one thought I can't get out of my mind is, for example, my dad right now. And his cognitive abilities have drastically decreased over the last 6 months. Once in a while he's great, and then once in a while he's just not there. A lot of what, you saw, for example, in Biden. And I cannot think, I've always had a really good family. We don't get into, I don't remember the last time. I do not remember the last time there was a fight at a family get-together, the immediate family. I can't remember. Decades? And I can't ever, I'm just throwing that out. I don't know if there's ever been one at like a holiday party. Not that family members didn't fight individually, but as we've gotten to be adults, I can't remember one. But in general, my family is most of the time unified on things that have to be done. But with my dad going through what he's going through right now, maybe it becomes a little bit more personal when you see the whole Biden thing, because you ask the question, how the hell could a family do that to him? How could they send him out there day in and day out knowing that the entire country knew it and knew that somebody behind the scenes had to be manipulating what was going on? Our family is so unified right now to take care of my father. My brothers and sisters are making sacrifices I can't believe. Just saints in the things that they're doing. And the family is completely unified towards my father's comfort, his dignity. I won't say there's an obsession on it, but I think there's a quiet obsession with it. Nobody really talks of, they don't say, there's a passion we have to do, but we all know it. It's to take care of Dad and to make sure he's okay. That's the only thing that matters. Nothing else matters. His health, his quality of life, his comfort, his dignity. That's it. And just like I can't understand, and maybe it's something in politics, I don't know. when it comes to politicians that are pathological liars, and you just wonder, in the history of the United States, have any of these people been confronted by their families, their best friends, who say, "Stop it, you look like an idiot"? And then I look at the same thing here when it comes to how you care for a loved one. You know, how can you get to the scene where the entire family knows, your entire immediate family knows, that either they or the close unelected aides or a combination of both are running the presidency and in throwing you out there, convincing you to do things that it clearly was destroying his image. It's something that's very hard to understand. And not that I want to take a liberty of what Eric would think, but I think Eric would think the exact same thing, knowing how he cares for his family members. And so I just want to throw that out because it seems so, I can't even comprehend. How did Jill Biden allow this to happen? How did she allow this to happen? And we all know, now nobody's arguing now. It was all true. They were hiding it. They were covering it up. Listen to this clip from Outnumbered. Kayleigh McEnany talks about, and this is where Jake Tapper said the Biden cover-up may be worse than Watergate. We already said that weeks ago that it is. Because this is about a shadow government. It's about people that were not elected, that did not get Senate confirmation, that are actually running the country. And after I heard this yesterday, I went, wow, these hearings are going to be insane. They're going to pull everybody in. You have to. You got to pull everybody in, and you got to put them under oath. Listen to this here, this segment on Outnumbered.
This is Alex Thompson this weekend on Fox News.
In the book, you quote a longtime Biden aide basically admitting he shouldn't be running again. They said to you on page 85, he just had to win, and then he could disappear for 4 years. He'd only have to show proof of life every once in a while. His aides could pick up the slack. Who would have been running the White House in a second Biden term?
Well, this person went on to say that when you're voting for a president, you're voting for the aides around him. But these aides were not even Senate-confirmed aides. These are White House aides. These were unelected people. And one of the things that really, I think, comes out in our reporting here is that if you believe, and I think a lot of these people do sincerely believe, that Donald Trump was and is an existential threat to democracy, you can rationalize anything, including sometimes doing undemocratic things, which I think is what this person is talking about.
Harris, so the point was made that these are not Senate-confirmed aides. Listen to these two sentences, allegedly from a cabinet secretary to Alex Thompson. I've never seen a situation like this before with so few people having so much power. They would make huge economic decisions without calling Treasury Secretary Yellen. These aides seem to be the ones making the calls. That's not the way democracy works.
That's just amazing. And that was a cabinet secretary. Wow. And so, yeah, we talk about the Constitution of the United States. We talk about, that this can never happen, which Jake Tapper's right. He said that this is worse than Watergate. Absolutely, it's worse than Watergate. This was unelected people. We have no idea how deep this goes. Doesn't it remind you that this reminds you of all of a sudden they find that a prosecutor, for example, has taken bribes for 20 years and they have to go through everything. They have to check every single case that prosecutor ever tried because the prosecutor did something that was wrong in one case. Therefore, every single case is suspect. And that's what I think you have here. Everything is suspect. Anything the president did over the last 4 years. Did he make those decisions? And then you get to the point, as I said, about the family. And going through this with my dad, Eric going through it with family members, many of you probably doing the same thing with your parents or did it with your parents or your significant other who went through dementia. And there's a passion that comes through to take care of that person, make sure they're comfortable, make sure they keep their dignity. And it's like with Biden, who the hell cares? Just do whatever, whatever. Power. We want the power. Because I don't know what else it is. Who doesn't have a family meeting and say, it's over, you're not running? Who doesn't say, whenever it got bad, whatever that year was, you're not running. In fact, you're out of here. The family is going to go, however you would do that. The family is going to go, and they're going to tell the White House doctor, then you approach whoever the members are. However you make that transition and do it, you get out of that situation. And then the story came up, well, they might have thought about it, but the next up was Kamala Harris. And the aides thought, when I saw this story yesterday, that a comatose Biden was better than a well-functioning Kamala Harris. So see what the justification becomes. First it was, okay, we can't do this because Trump is a threat to democracy. Well, you're completely undemocratic. First it's Trump, and then it becomes not Trump anymore. It becomes, we can't put that idiot. We're better making the decisions because of Trump, and she's an idiot. That's what's being said. Wow. When Comer holds those hearings, whenever they do that, and I don't know whether it'll be behind closed doors, maybe some of it will be, I don't know. Maybe it will be both. Wow. Probably it will be both. I don't say this much, but that is must-watch TV. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at JJ Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on speed and space management. In order to manage speed, you need to understand the 4 factors involved in stopping a vehicle. Perception distance is the distance a vehicle travels from the time you see a hazard until your brain recognizes it. The perception time for an alert driver is approximately 3/4 of a second. Reaction distance is the distance a vehicle travels from the time your brain tells your foot to move from the accelerator until your foot hits the brake pedal. The average driver has a reaction time of 3/4 of a second. Brake lag distance also needs to be taken into account. When operating a vehicle with air brakes, it takes about half a second for the mechanical operation to take place. Finally, braking distance is the distance it takes a vehicle to stop once the brakes are applied. Braking distance is affected by the weight, length, and speed of the vehicle, as well as road condition. This tip was brought to you by JJ Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. He's off for a couple of days, in fact. I want to play this here from Fox News. This is Julie Banderas and Joe Concha talking about the cover-up of former President Joe Biden's cognitive decline. And some of it's actually funny here because they talk about the fact that there really is no news here. It's just what we observed over the last couple of years. There is news, and the news is that the hearings that will probably take place have just been energized by the fact that now nobody is denying that not only was it covered up, but there were aides that were making decisions for the president. That's, that kind of source material that nobody disagrees with. That's what sends this story into another dimension. But here's part of what they had to say.
What would we do without the lies? What would we be talking about? Honestly, quite frankly, I don't even know what we'd be covering on this channel. There's just so much to report. But let me just start with the aide, the Obama aide that was just on the air. Saw that earlier. First of all, he acts as if he didn't know anything. Okay, fine, I'll give it to him. But you know what? Who did? Barack Obama. Why do you think he didn't endorse Biden? I believe that this was something that during the Obama administration, it was well known that Biden was not equipped, and Obama didn't want to lie. He's like the one person on the former administration that didn't want to lie to cover up for Biden.
What did he say about Joe Biden? Oh, no, never mind. That's for a nighttime show. My favorite part of that quote that Alex Thompson gave Shannon Bream was when he refers to our reporting here. I'm like, you look at this book, and it's like a retread of everything we've been saying for 4 years. There's really no reporting here.
We don't need White House aides to tell us how Joe Biden was in terms of cognitively, because you, Julie, me, have eyesight and hearing and sobriety and sanity. All you have to do is watch this guy outside of a teleprompter for 2 minutes when, obviously, when he was outside of a teleprompter, he was a human Chernobyl. I am tired of hearing about Democrats, by the way, saying we had to protect Joe Biden to save democracy, when they literally installed a candidate in Kamala Harris, Soviet style, without one vote from the general public. So it's this kind of condescension and dishonesty that's going to ensure that Democrats don't win any elections for any.
Here's what Eric and I said when they started first talking about the book and excerpts from the book. Yes, they hid his cognitive abilities. It's like, duh, yeah, we saw it. And that's why the whole thing with even Jake Tapper with, I must have missed it. Well, then you need to quit journalism. You need to quit being an opinion maker, because if you didn't observe this when the entire country did, remember the polling going back years ago showed the majority of Americans didn't believe he should run again. And this is probably by the time you got to, 2022, 2023? He was out there every day. He couldn't operate. If he didn't have a teleprompter, he was dead. I mean, we said it, that when he would turn around, he's walking off after he gave a quick update on something, and somebody asked a question, he'd turn around, and we went, back then we said those aides must be absolutely panicking.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app, available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. He's got a couple of days off. We'll be here each and every day with you, covering everything. That's what we do. Getting back to the whole original sin book and Jake Tapper. I mean, little tidbits are coming out every day, which is like making people go, wow. And the stuff that had come out the last couple of days, again, is wow. Stuff that came out yesterday is wow. The part of the book where they talk about a cabinet member saying aides were making decisions that affected the economy and never consulted Treasury, never consulted anybody, just went ahead and did it. And then you have this. This is former Barack Obama aide John Lovett. He was on a podcast and admits that he saw Joe Biden rambling and hard to follow. Here it is.
We went to the White House and saw Joe Biden, who had just come back from a trip, and he was, I don't think it wasn't as I think egregious as what you hear in the audio around the Her report.
This was April of
It was
2024.
April, and he was rambling, and he was hard to follow, and he repeated a story. But then we were assured by people around him that he was just exhausted. I remember feeling, I want to talk about this as a huge liability. I want to talk about this as something Joe Biden can overcome. But I'm not going to go so far as to say, I think Joe Biden must drop out. He is too old to be president. A, because I didn't know exactly what was going on behind the scenes. But B, if Joe Biden is the candidate, I want him to win because I care about the country.
There you go. New York Post with the story, White House reporters deeply divided over Biden cover-up after Jake Tapper's original sin. Well, I imagine that they are, especially those who covered it up. Of course they're going to be deeply divided. Read parts of this to you from the New York Post. White House reporters who cover the Biden administration are speaking out about whether they were duped into thinking the president was mentally fit for office and if West Wing staffers attempted to hide the truth from Americans. CNN's Jake Tapper and Axios' reporter Alex Thompson's original sin, President Biden's decline, its cover-up, and his disastrous choice to run again was released on Tuesday, has created plenty of chatter among the White House press corps. While putting the issue back at the forefront, the book details Joe Biden's mental acuity, concerns while in office, accusing the Biden White House of lying to reporters and voters. Fox News senior White House correspondent Pete Ducey responded by posting multiple videos on X showing him questioning Biden and the White House about the then president's cognitive decline, only to be quickly dismissed. Other White House reporters found it odd that CNN is tied to the book, while some had strong feelings about whether there was truly a cover-up. One White House reporter truly believes the White House clearly tried to hide the truth from everyone. Quote, this was a cover-up by any definition. The Biden team to have undertaken at the end of the day, there is only so much a White House staff can do to shield a president of the United States from exposure to the press and public. The cover-up had both private and public-facing dimensions, the White House reporter told Fox News Digital. The reporter said the private dimensions included secret strategizing and decision-making, while the public strategy featured, quote, brazen lies, end of quote, such as a video of Biden appearing confused, being chalked up to cheap fakes, that's a quote, and, quote, the silencing of reporters who pressed the issue early on. Ducey and a handful of other reporters were regularly shut down by Karine Jean-Pierre if they dared to ask about the president's fitness for office. The subject that was denounced as so rude, remember that, and so fringe to ask about back then, eventually emerged as the defining issue of the Biden presidency, the White House reporter said. A second White House reporter echoed the thoughts of Daily Show host Jon Stewart, who on Monday blasted CNN for relentlessly promoting a book about news they should have told you was news a year ago for free. Sources are always more eager to talk after the fact, but it's not a good look that CNN, a heavy hitter with plenty of weight to challenge the White House as the decline happened, barely scratched the surface of the story that Tapper now reports, a second White House reporter told Fox News Digital. Late work still deserves half credit, though, they added. A third White House reporter initially believed the 82-year-old Biden was merely aging or perhaps suffering from COVID side effects and doesn't think the press is culpable. You know, it's one of those things. The guy is old. He speaks like an old person. It's getting more pronounced as time goes by, the third White House reporter said of Biden. I noticed personally a dramatic difference between when he took office at the start of the second year. I suspected and wondered if it might be because of COVID and the after effects of COVID. He had it twice, I think. I know it's been reported that a brain fog kind of thing can happen after you've had it. I left it at that. They continued. I remember a very different Joe Biden in 2014 and 2015. He was a decade younger, so that makes sense. The third White House reporter doesn't get the notion that journalists should have been able to uncover the truth about his declining health at the moment. No, they were helpless. How exactly do you report it? If you're a White House reporter, you have responsibilities to explain what happened that day. Like in any White House, there's usually something happening every single day. They said, noting that reporting on Biden's mental acuity concerns would be a major enterprise story. People are not going to confirm medical stuff at all, not likely going to tell you what he's like in private or in Wilmington because it makes him look bad, they said. Now the Biden White House didn't leak. It just didn't. So if you want to go after that story, you're going to have to spend weeks on it, and you may not get anything. In the meantime, you're not doing other things. The same White House reporter is puzzled that Karine Jean-Pierre has taken so much heat for regularly insisting that Biden was fit for office to that extent, to the extent that she says he's more energetic than I am. That's just silly, and she probably should have not said that. On the other hand, to have her come out and say, oh, no, he's actually incapable of doing the job and ought to resign, that's not realistic, the White House reporter said, adding that Jean-Pierre and other top Biden staffers had skin in the game. I mean, come on, you can't expect the chief of staff to say, this guy can't do the job. A third White House reporter isn't sure Biden's age impacted his job performance and believes a lot of his shortcomings were simply policy issues. By the way, they are admitting they shouldn't be reporters. Yes, policy issues were a problem, but everybody saw his cognitive decline. Everyone saw it. So there you go. And it continues to go on and says the first White House reporter, who spoke on condition of anonymity, believes the truth will eventually come out. Well, it's coming out right now. But to sit there and say you didn't see it, everybody saw it. We all saw it. And those of us that have dealt with cognitive problems with our relatives and our friends, whatever, you saw it, you knew it. Jake Tapper finally had to admit it, didn't he? And he had to apologize. So that's the thing. But I look at these reporters who say, well, we didn't know what happened. Could have been just his age. We didn't see anything. Then quit your job. Because you're completely and totally clueless. You have no observational skills at all. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. And I expect it's only going to go in one direction, and that is you're going to have them testify before Congress. And Comer said he's pulling in everybody. My question, do you pull in Jill Biden or do you not pull her in? Because she's the wife who has stood by him. Will Democrats be able to win points on that? That's a concern. But she was so close to him. But if you bring in all the other aides and they're under oath, and she had a part in it, that question will be asked to them. And it's amazing because they seem all willing to talk on condition of anonymity after the loss. So where will it go from there? And nobody really knows that, do we, at the moment? We just don't know. So, yeah. I just wondered, how long do they keep talking about the book? It's been out over a week now. They talked about it, what? It's been talked about for the last month, really, right? Probably because it's been out. Book came out a week ago yesterday. We knew the excerpts coming out, but there's more excerpts. And when you have, like I said, when we played the audio cut from Fox earlier, with the excerpts from a cabinet secretary, stating, these people were making decisions. Biden wasn't. The people around him were making the decisions, and they weren't even contacting the Treasury Department. They were just making decisions, huge economic decisions, without the president having the cognitive ability to do so, or going to anybody in Treasury to make sure all of this to get somebody, some cabinet secretary, somebody to agree with it who was at least appointed and confirmed by the Senate. Because that was the point that really came out yesterday. Understand who these aides are. They weren't cabinet members. And now we know all the names of the people that were surrounding the former president while he was in office. So as long as there's new allegations that they can come out with every day, this thing's going to continue to go. And they were still talking about it yesterday. I'm sure there's going to be a point where Democrats want to stop talking about it. I don't know how you do, though, in this particular case, because it's so unprecedented in American history. Something like this. It's just to this degree on the basically on the cognitive problems. And the fact that there's a book out where they admit, the sources admit, that he wasn't making the decisions all the time. That unelected aides were making decisions. Well, who are they? That's the next question. That's the next logical connect the dot. Well, then, who was it? And you got to get them to testify. You get everybody around the president in that circle to testify under oath in Congress. 866-90-RED-EYE.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. He's Eric Harley. Eric has the morning off. Hey, download our Red Eye Radio app today. Why? Well, our show ends a little over an hour from now. And when our show ends, we record the entire show, and it becomes our podcast. So you go to our Red Eye Radio app after the show is over, and if you haven't caught all of the show, or you figure that I've got to have more, just go to our Red Eye Radio app. And if for some reason you cannot listen to one of our great radio stations when we're on live overnight, we stream all 5 hours live on our Red Eye Radio app. Coming up following the top of the hour, interesting news. I saw News Nation. I didn't see this anywhere else yesterday. News Nation broke a story about a USDA whistleblower who said the Biden administration forgave farm loans for only non-white, non-male farmers. And when they were told it was illegal and stopped doing it, they continued to secretly do it. We'll get to that coming up here following the top of the hour. Plus, that sportswear company that really came out because of the radical transgender movement, the women's activist sportswear brand XXXY Athletics, suing the state of Colorado over a recent state law that the company claims would interfere with their ability to market its message. They cannot market their message because it would be viewed as discriminatory, and we'll give you some of the specifics to it because it's just really, 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 I think, a fascinating issue. Plus, Politico, the left-wing publication, floats a Democrat shadow cabinet, a list of political celebrities to combat Trump. This seems to be the week that Democrats are saying, are we using the proper syntax? Should we use complicated words? Who do we get $20 million to convince males to vote for us? We got more.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.